For most of your life, you've been told one simple thing about vegetables. Eat more of them. Eat the colorful ones. Pile your plate with greens. Drink them, blend them, snack on them. And honestly, for most of your years on this earth, that was good advice. Solid, sensible, almost universally correct advice. But I need to tell you something today that almost nobody is telling adults past 60, and once you hear it, you will not be able to unhear it. After 60, that blanket advice becomes incomplete in a way that can quietly hurt you. Because after 60, the body you live in is not the same machine it was at 35 or 45. Things have shifted on the inside. Filters are slower, linings are thinner, hormones are more delicate, inflammation is louder, and certain vegetables that were absolute heroes for you in your 40s, can quietly start working against you now, against your kidneys, against your thyroid, against your aching joints. At the very same time, there are three other vegetables that become almost medicinal for you after 60 in a way they never were when you were younger. Vegetables that protect your brain, vegetables that activate your body's own cancer defenses, vegetables that literally repopulate the bacteria associated with the longest living human beings on the planet. By the end of these next few minutes, you will know exactly which vegetables to set aside or moderate, and which ones to start eating with intention every single week. Because at this stage of life, your plate is not just food. It is one of the most powerful prescriptions you will ever have access to. My name is Dr. Thomas Semeth, and I've spent over 26 years working as a vascular and internal medicine specialist, with a particular focus on aging biology and the chemistry of food. If you're new here, please subscribe before we go any further. This channel exists to put real, current science back into the hands of the people who actually need it most, and every subscriber genuinely helps these videos reach the next person, quietly searching for the answers their last doctor's appointment didn't have time to give them. Before I tell you which vegetables belong on which list, I have to explain why after 60 matters as a category at all, because this is not a generic warning that applies to everyone. There are very specific, very documented biological shifts happening inside your body right now that change the way you process food, including the very vegetables you have been told to celebrate. Let me walk you through three of these shifts. The first one is your kidneys. Long-running studies in geriatric medicine have repeatedly shown that by the time most adults reach the 7th decade of life, kidney filtration capacity has dropped to around half of what it was in early adulthood. Now, in most people, this drop creates no obvious symptoms. Your routine blood work might come back looking just fine. But behind the curtain, your kidneys are working slower, processing waste at a more measured pace, and certain compounds that a young body would clear out within hours now linger longer than they should. Imagine an old coffee filter that still pours but takes twice as long to drip through, while sediment settles in the bottom. That is roughly what is happening, silently, hour by hour, inside your kidneys after 60. The second shift involves your thyroid. As we age, the thyroid gland becomes increasingly fragile, increasingly sensitive to interference. Hormone production naturally tapers, and certain compounds in food that a younger thyroid would shrug off can interfere meaningfully with an older one. The third shift is something researchers now call inflammaging. That is not a typo or a buzzword someone made up on social media. It is a recognized term describing the slow, low-grade inflammation that quietly rises in nearly every human body as the years pass. And inflammaging has been linked, in study after study, to almost every condition we fear most as we age, from Alzheimer's disease to cardiovascular events to cancer to severe arthritis. What sits on your plate every day either fans those quiet inflammatory embers or starts to put them out. So I want to be very clear before we continue. The goal today is not to eat fewer vegetables. The goal is to eat the right vegetables, prepared the right way, in the right amounts, for the body you are walking around in today, not the body you were walking around in at 35. Now let me start with the three vegetables I want you to be more careful about, because the first one is going to surprise you the most. Spinach. Yes, that spinach. The leafy green that has been crowned a superfood on every magazine cover and every wellness website for the past 2 decades. The vegetable Popeye built his career on. And for adults under 60 with sharp, clean kidney function, spinach genuinely deserves much of that praise. It is loaded with iron, folate, vitamin K, magnesium, and a whole class of plant antioxidants. But here is what very few people are told. Spinach is also extraordinarily high in something called oxalates. Raw spinach contains one of the highest oxalate concentrations of any common vegetable on a grocery shelf. In a young, fast-filtering body, oxalate rolls in, your kidneys clear it efficiently, and it leaves your system without drama. But remember what I just told you about kidney filtration after 60. When the filter slows down, oxalate begins to accumulate. It binds to calcium in your bloodstream and forms tiny crystals of calcium oxalate, the very same crystals that lodge inside kidney tubules and, over years of repeated exposure, contribute to the slow worsening of chronic kidney disease. Research in nephrology journals has shown that older adults who consume high oxalate vegetables daily display measurably faster declines in kidney function compared to those who eat them sparingly. The second vegetable, or rather the second category, is going to push directly against something you see celebrated everywhere right now. Raw kale smoothies in the morning, raw broccoli florets dipped in hummus as a snack, bright green juices packed with raw cruciferous vegetables on every health influencer's countertop. For some people, in some seasons of life, there are real benefits there. But if you are past 60 and you are eating large amounts of raw cruciferous vegetables every single day, raw kale, raw broccoli, raw bok choy, raw Brussels sprouts, raw cauliflower, you may be slowly suppressing one of the most important hormone systems in your entire body. I'm talking about your thyroid. Cruciferous vegetables contain compounds called glucosinolates, which inside the body convert to substances we call goitrogens. The word goitrogen comes from goiter, a swelling of the thyroid that historically appeared in people whose iodine uptake was being blocked. Goitrogens interfere with an enzyme your thyroid absolutely depends on to manufacture its hormones, and over time, in significant amounts, they reduce how efficiently your thyroid pulls iodine from your bloodstream. Studies in endocrinology journals have shown that consistently consuming large amounts of raw cruciferous vegetables can reduce iodine uptake by up to a quarter. Why does this matter so much more after 60? Because thyroid function naturally fades with age anyway. A condition called subclinical hypothyroidism, where your thyroid is mildly underperforming without your standard tests obviously catching it, affects roughly 1 in 5 adults over 60. And the symptoms, the quiet ones, the easily dismissed ones, are the same symptoms most people wave away as just getting older. Persistent fatigue, mental fog, mild low mood, a few extra pounds that will not come off no matter what you try, always feeling cold when everyone else feels fine. If you fall in that group and you are also pouring raw kale into a blender every single morning, you are very possibly compounding a problem that was already developing underneath the surface. Now here is the genuinely good news. Heat dismantles roughly 90% of the goitrogenic compounds in cruciferous vegetables, roasting your broccoli until the edges crisp, steaming your Brussels sprouts, stir-frying your bok choy with a little sesame oil. You preserve the cancer-fighting sulforaphane, the fiber, the vitamin C, and the rich plant antioxidants, while quietly disarming nearly all of the thyroid interference. The vegetable itself is not the villain in this story. The preparation is. Cook your cruciferous vegetables. Keep your raw servings to a small portion, no more than half a cup a day. And if you are already being treated for any thyroid condition, please bring this up with the doctor managing your thyroid medication. The third vegetable on the careful list comes with an important qualifier, and I want to be precise. I am not telling everyone to swear off tomatoes. Fresh tomatoes contain genuine, well-documented benefits, lycopene chief among them, along with vitamin C and a range of helpful antioxidants. For many older adults, tomatoes remain a wonderful, joyful food. What I am specifically talking about today is canned tomatoes, particularly heavy daily consumption of nightshade vegetables in adults over 60 who are already living with joint pain, inflammatory arthritis, or any kind of autoimmune condition. And let's be honest, that group is enormous in this country. Tomatoes belong to the nightshade family, which also includes eggplant, bell peppers, and white potatoes. Nightshades contain compounds called lectins and a substance called solanine. In a younger body with a tightly sealed gut lining, those compounds typically pass straight through without causing any drama. But here is what genuinely changes with age. Research in gastroenterology has consistently shown that intestinal permeability, often called leaky gut, increases as we age. The microscopic seams between the cells lining your intestine loosen over time, and compounds that would have been politely turned away when you were 40 can now slip into your bloodstream and provoke immune responses that your body did not need to be having. Studies looking specifically at older adults with rheumatoid arthritis and inflammatory joint disease have linked higher nightshade lectin intake to elevated levels of inflammatory markers in the blood, the same markers that drive the swelling, stiffness, and pain in the joints. And why specifically canned tomatoes on top of all this? Because the natural acidity of tomatoes, combined with the resin linings still present in many cans, creates a particularly concentrated source of both lectin exposure and an additional inflammatory burden. Think of canned tomatoes like an old friend who used to bring just one suitcase to the house and now arrives with three. Same friend, different load. My practical recommendation is this: if you are living with joint pain, inflammatory arthritis, or any autoimmune condition, try removing canned tomatoes from your routine for 4 full weeks. Pay attention to how your knees feel in the morning, how your hands feel when you grip the steering wheel, how stiff you are when you stand up after dinner. If you want to keep tomatoes in your cooking, switch to fresh ones and consider removing the skins and seeds, which carry the highest concentration of solanine. If you have none of those conditions, please enjoy your tomatoes without worry. This warning is specifically about the intersection of canned products and an already inflamed system, not a blanket judgment against tomatoes themselves. Now let me move to the part of this video that I love most, the 3 vegetables I want you to actively put on your plate this week, because here is where things become genuinely exciting. The first one, the one I would put at the very top of any list for adults past 60 who care about their brain, is beets. As someone whose career has revolved around the health of blood vessels, beets are one of the most quietly powerful foods I have ever encountered for protecting circulation in the aging brain. The mechanism is beautiful in its simplicity. Beets are extraordinarily rich in dietary nitrates. When you eat beets, friendly bacteria living in your mouth and gut convert those nitrates into nitric oxide, a tiny but extraordinary signaling molecule that your blood vessel walls use to relax, widen, and improve circulation. A landmark study measured cerebral blood flow in older adults after they consumed a high-nitrate beet drink. The result was striking. Blood flow specifically to the frontal lobe, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, planning, and the earliest abilities to fade in age-related cognitive decline, increased measurably within hours. Imagine clearing leaves from a clogged garden hose. Suddenly, water reaches the parts of the garden that had been dry for months. That is roughly what nitric oxide is doing inside the small vessels of your aging brain. The second vegetable I want you to start eating is in a different category of power, and most people listening to this video have probably never actually tried it. Broccoli sprouts. The tiny, thread-thin sprouts that grow when broccoli seeds germinate for just 4 or 5 days. You might assume that a baby plant must contain less nutrition than a mature one. The opposite turns out to be true. Research from a team at Johns Hopkins University, building on decades of work into cancer prevention, found that broccoli sprouts contain dramatically higher concentrations of sulforaphane than mature broccoli, by a factor of 50 times or even 100 times in some samples. Sulforaphane is one of the most potent natural anti-cancer compounds we have ever identified in the food supply. It works by activating what scientists call the NRF2 pathway, which functions like a master control panel for your body's cellular defense system. When sulforaphane flips that switch, your cells start producing more of their own internal antioxidants. Repair enzymes work harder, detoxification pathways get busier, and inflammation pathways quiet down. There is also growing research suggesting sulforaphane crosses the blood-brain barrier and reduces the kind of brain inflammation that drives Alzheimer's and accelerated cognitive aging. Broccoli sprouts are now widely available in the produce sections of larger grocery stores, but here is something I love telling people: you can grow them at home in 5 days using nothing more than a glass mason jar, a mesh lid, and a few dollars of seeds. The third vegetable, and possibly the most underappreciated one in the entire produce aisle, is purple cabbage, sometimes called red cabbage. It is cheap, often less than $2 for a head that lasts a full week, and the science behind what it does specifically for aging bodies is remarkable. The pigments responsible for that intense purple color are called anthocyanins, and they do something rare in the world of nutrition. They benefit your gut, your inflammation, and your brain at the same time. As we age, our gut microbiome loses diversity, and we lose certain bacteria that have come to be associated with the very longest living people on the planet. One of those bacteria is called Akkermansia mucinifera, consistently found in higher amounts in healthy centenarians. Recent research found that the anthocyanins in purple cabbage specifically encourage the growth of Akkermansia mucinifera in the gut. You are quite literally feeding the bacteria most associated with long life. The same anthocyanins are also capable of crossing into brain tissue, where they reduce oxidative stress and protect neurons from damage. And because purple cabbage is a cruciferous vegetable, when cooked, the goitrogenic effect is largely neutralized while its liver detox supporting benefits remain. Let me bring all of this together into something you can take to the grocery store this week. Beets 4 to 5 times. Broccoli sprouts 2 to 3 tablespoons every day. Purple cabbage 5 to 7 times, cooked or fermented. Cooked spinach a maximum of twice. Raw cruciferous limited to half a cup or less per day. Canned tomatoes paused for 4 weeks if you have inflammation. That is the entire blueprint. No expensive supplements, no complicated meal plans, just a precise, science-aware adjustment to the produce you are already buying. I want to leave you with something I genuinely believe. Eating vegetables is still one of the very best things you can do for your health at any age. That has not changed. What needs to change is the precision. Your body at 65 is not your body at 35. Your kidneys filter slower. Your thyroid is more delicate. Your gut is more permeable. Your blood vessels need more targeted help. And the vegetables that serve that body best are not always the ones with the loudest marketing. They are the ones the science is quietly pointing toward. Beets for the blood flow inside your aging brain. Broccoli sprouts for the master defense system inside every cell of your body. Purple cabbage for the gut bacteria of the longest living people on Earth. And the ones to moderate raw spinach by the bowlful, raw cruciferous every day, canned tomatoes if your joints already ache, are not poisons. They are simply not optimized for the body you are actually living in today. If this video helped you see your produce aisle differently, please do 3 small things for me. Hit the like button so this finds the next person who needs it. Drop a comment below telling me which of these 3 vegetables you are putting on your shopping list this week. And share this video with someone you love who is past 60 and trying to eat well. Subscribe and turn on notifications because next week I will be walking you through the 3 fruits that work like medicine for the aging heart, and the 2 that quietly drive inflammation without anyone realizing. As always, please keep your own doctor in the loop. Make them part of your team. I'm Dr. Thomas Semeth. Take very good care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.